Wouldn't it be wonderful if there were a few magic words and phrases that you could say that somehow made you more money quicker and easier than ever before in your life? Guess what? Turns out there are such phrases. And when I figured these phrases out, they put me on the path that resulted in tens of millions of dollars. In this video, I'm going to reveal to you my top 7 phrases for you to use. And beyond making money with these phrases, the phrases will also come in handy for you in a variety of ways, such as people are more open to listen to you and give you more space to express yourself. And damn, that just feels good on the soul, doesn't it? It will also help you in work environments. So if you deal with teams, if you have bosses and managers, or if you have subordinates underneath you, you're gonna see a better relationship with them and you're gonna get more stuff done together. You'll also have better control in conversations while still empowering other people in those very conversations. Basically, these phrases allow you to shift from confrontational to collaborative, and finally, you'll be able to assert yourself without being aggressive. You can ask without being demanding, and you can lead without being rude. Sound good? All right, let's dive in then. Phrase number 1, one word, because. You tell a kid, hey, clean your room, and he'll resist. Tell him, clean your room because we're going out for ice cream after, and you might get a different result. In business, if you don't provide a reason for your actions, people are going to naturally assume the worst. So if you're selling something and you don't give the why for why you're selling it, the because, then they'll think you're just trying to scam them. Every webinar I do has a because section. I am doing this webinar today because ... Now think about this. No one who is in business is going to do a free webinar only out of the kindness of their heart. There's always a motive. So you should give the motive to people in a way that will allow them to be the most receptive to hearing your whole presentation. So let me give you an example of a because in a webinar. So if I'm doing a webinar, I'll say, I am doing this webinar today because if I help you out and I improve your business, then someday, one day down the line, you might come back and do business with me. Because if I make you better, you'll have a certain affinity towards me, and that affinity might result in my brand being elevated and you doing business with me in the future. So that's a good example of a reason why where an audience member would say, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And now I'm not guarded or cautious about what your motive may or may not be. So for example, with these YouTube videos, I create them for you because I know long-term it will help me grow my organic reach, and it will eventually allow me to attract new customers that I otherwise couldn't reach. Number 2. Sound fair? An agreement is where two minds can meet together in the middle. In marketing, though, it often feels one-sided because the marketer is pushing his or her ideas onto the audience. And this is especially true when you're doing presentations where there's one of you and there's many of them in the audience. So when you are getting your audience to go on a journey with you and to buy in what you're selling, then the first thing you should do is get an agreement to go on that journey. And it might sound something like this. My agenda today is to show you X, Y, and Z to help you achieve A, B, and C, and I'm going to give the best that I can to you in return for your full attention. Then if there's something that you can use, all I ask is you please put it into action. Does that sound fair? Or on YouTube, if these videos help you out, all I ask is that you like and subscribe. Does that sound fair? By tying it down, you get agreement, and by getting agreement, you're more likely to have somebody move forward with what you're asking them to do. Number 3, 2 choices. There's this famous poem by Robert Frost. It's called The Road Not Taken. And it goes like this. The traveler comes to a fork in the road, has to choose between the worn path or the road less traveled. And you know the story. He chooses the road less traveled, and the poem concludes with this famous line, and that has made all the difference. Now, many people believe that poem means that if you choose the more difficult path up front, somehow your life will be more enriched later. And that's not actually the meaning that Frost had. The real point that Frost was making is when we have to make a tough choice and it's unclear which path to choose, whatever choice we make, we then tend to justify later as the right choice. Point is, we all want clear direction to remove noise and confusion. So when presenting to an audience and offering a course of action, make it between 2 choices. The obvious choice you want them to take versus the choice they're likely to take if they don't change their behavior. And here's an example of how this could go. You could say, today you have to decide if you're willing to try something new to get a different result, or if you're still okay doing what you've always done and getting what you've always got. Number 4. Would you be against? I learned this from my friend Chris Voss. And Chris and I, we've had arguments about this point going back and forth. Chris believes that no questions are better than yes questions. And I think the real value is in asking a no question if the audience is used to hearing a yes question. So would you be against investing your time and energy into bettering yourself is probably a more useful question than would you be willing to invest time and energy into bettering yourself? So because of this, now whenever I ask questions, I always look at it from both the positive and the negative framing of the question. Would you be against doing business together, for example, I think is more powerful than would you like to do business together. Now, I tend to still use more yes questions than no questions, but sometimes that perfect would you be against question will close a deal better than a yes question ever could. Number 5. More on that in a second. This is one you probably won't find on any other list out there. In marketing, there's this concept, we call it an open loop, where you only give a partial answer, then you hint that the rest of the answer will be revealed later. And this is done to maintain focus and curiosity and create a desire for your audience to get an answer. So for example, I could say, when I set the record for the biggest affiliate promo of all time, when I did $9.7 million in 8 days, one thing people aren't aware of is I did it without spending a penny on advertising. More on that in a second. First, let me tell you how I use webinars differently than anyone else to set the record for the biggest affiliate promotion of all time. Now, I know when I said that, you're thinking, okay, Jason, but how did you do it without paid advertising? Now you're glued to want to know the answer to that, and that is the power of the open loop. So practice using the phrase, more on that in a second, during your presentations. Number 6, imagine. If I were to tell you that doing something specifically would guarantee your success, how might you react to that? Perhaps you would think that, I don't know, maybe somebody else could do it, but I can't do it because I have some sort of deficiency. And this is very common in selling. If I say you can do this, then most people's response is to say, no, I can't do this. There's something wrong with me. There's something preventing me from doing this. However, if I switch it from you can do this to imagine doing this, then I can bypass that low self-esteem issue that most customers have when facing a problem that they're having trouble solving. Imagine is a word that I picked up studying the best hypnotists of all time. You don't have to actually do it. You just have to see yourself in your mind doing it. And if you can't first see yourself in your mind doing it, then you'll never be able to do it for real. The clearer you can imagine doing it in your mind, guess what? The easier it becomes to actually do it for real. So just imagine what life is like if you can easily use these phrases in your conversation. Number 7. What I'm hearing is, there's 2 ways you can listen. You can either listen passively or you can listen actively. And in school, most of us, we just listen passively. We sit there and the info's thrown at us. We might catch a little bit of it, but most of it goes in one ear and out the other. And that's what ends up happening then for the rest of our lives. We get in conversations and we discover most people aren't actually listening to us. They're just sitting there waiting for their turn to talk. So you will blow people's minds when you actually actively begin listening to them. And here's how you do this. I want you to try this out. When somebody talks to you next time and speaks for like a minute or 2 before pausing for your response, I want you to respond this way. Say, what I'm hearing is, and then try to summarize what they just said back to them, but put it in your own words. This is a phrase that can't fail. If you summarize it on point, then the other person in the conversation is going to feel heard and appreciate you so much more. And if your summary's off, guess what? They'll be excited to clarify it for you so you can better understand them. And guess what? The better you understand somebody, the more you can connect with them. The more you can connect with them, the more you can have impact upon them. And impact is everything when it comes to business. On webinars, there's another way I use this. Say during the Q&A section of the webinar close, we're taking questions from the audience, trying to figure out if they should buy or not. And oftentimes I'll get a lot of similar questions and I'll lump them together and then I'll reframe them in a way that will be more useful. So if people are saying things like, oh, the money's too tight, or I don't think I can afford this, or wow, that's really expensive, what I'll say on the webinar is this. I'll say, what I'm hearing is you want to get the most out of your money, because if you make the wrong investment, then you won't have much wiggle room left with your expenses. Is that correct? And then I can put the focus on how would they know if they're getting the most out of their money or not in relationship to the investment that I'm asking for. Same thing with people who say, I'm too busy, or I don't have enough time, or something along those lines. My response might be, what I'm hearing you saying is what you put your time to is important, and you want to best use your limited time. And then I can go from there. So by reframing the question, my audience can keep an open mind. So if I let my audience shut down, they stay stuck and they don't solve their problem, whether they buy or not. And that's bad. And everybody feels like they don't have any more time these days. And if that truly were the case, then there's nothing you could do to help them if they believe they didn't have any more time. So we use these phrases to help open up people to see more possibilities that are actually there, and that for some reason they've shut themselves off. And then you help open the audience up. They get a better result, and then you get paid more. So which phrase do you see yourself first using next when you go out there to spread your message? Let me know in the chat, and I'll catch you on the next video.